Man, you know, it's pretty amazing that even though it's 70 degrees outside of the greenhouse, it's like 10 to 15 degrees warmer inside the greenhouse. It's so fascinating to me, you know, the power of a greenhouse. It's science. It's so cool. But it's hotter than hell in here, so I'm gonna try to get this video done in a snap. I'm Jacob Castro and welcome to another video here on Jacob's Aquarium. Hope you guys are doing good and I hope your tanks are doing good as well. So today in this video we'll be talking about Hygro Blue, and Hygro, that's similar to this species as well, because this species is similar to it has a lot of brothers and sisters, I'll just say that, and they pretty much all grow in a similar way. So if you follow my directions on how to grow this plant, how to care for it, things like that, with this plant you'll know pretty much how to care for other species of Hygro as well. Not every species, but the ones that I'm going to tell you that are pretty much the same as Hygro Blue. So as with every plant guide here on Jacob's Aquarium, we're going to talk about how this plant grows, how to care for it, the color that you can expect out of it, how to propagate it, and pretty much everything you need to know on how to grow this plant successfully in your aquarium. So Hygro Blue is a plant that is best suited for large aquariums because it does get really big. It's nothing you want to put in a nano tank, a 10-gallon tank, a 30-gallon tank. I would say more along the lines of a 50 to 100-gallon tank. But there are people that grow gigantic plants in small tanks. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's your personal preference, but as far as my opinion, I would recommend it for larger tanks so you can really enjoy this plant once it grows to its full potential. It's a plant that pretty much can grow in a variety of different lighting conditions. I've grown it in low light tanks, I've grown it in medium light tanks, I've grown it in high light tanks. And I should also mention that, you know, a lot of people send me questions and they're confused by that. They're like, what is a low light, medium light, high light tank, you know? Well, to be quite honest, it's pretty much exactly how it sounds. Like, for example, if a low light tank would be a tank that just has some cheap T5 fixtures over it, nothing too crazy. I mean, I would say maybe one single strip of T5 or T8s. I'm not sure if people still use those because LEDs are all the rage right now. But that would pretty much be a low light tank. You can turn that tank into a high light tank by adding more of those light fixtures. And you know, you pretty much get the rest. It just goes up from there. So, you know, it's just low, medium, high. It's just based on what you see in your tank. Like if you notice that there's low lighting, then it's a low light tank. If you notice that your tank is not as bright as other people's tanks, it's a low light tank. You know, it's as simple as that. But it's important to follow those rules, because as I'm sure you already know, a lot of plants prefer different lighting conditions. But this plant, Hygro Blue, can grow in a variety of lighting conditions. It's grown well for me in low, medium, and high light tanks. It does best in high light tanks, I would say. It grows the fastest in high light tanks, as with a lot of plants. But as I said, there are some plants that don't prefer certain lighting conditions, and they will actually die or, you know, kind of look like they're being burnt alive if they're grown in the wrong lighting conditions. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, it's a very easy to grow plant in that respect, where you can grow it in a variety of lighting conditions. But like I said, it does grow the fastest in high light tanks. In a low light tank, I would imagine it would grow just a little bit slower. Now, as far as the color with this plant, it's actually really interesting. I usually get this plant in its immersed form from my supplier, and when it comes in, it mostly looks like its name, Hygro Blue. The leaves they actually do look like a greenish bluish color. But that's not really how the plant is going to stay once it's grown submerged in your aquarium. And if you don't know the difference between immersed and submerged grown plants, go back in my list of videos on my channel and look it up. There's a video that's titled Immersed and Submerged Plants where I talk all about that. and explain everything you need to know to tell the difference between immersed and submerged grown plants. So watch that video if you don't know what that is. But yeah, most of the time when I get this plant in, it's in its immersed state, and once I grow it submerged and it transitions, the leaves kind of take on more of a lightish yellowish greenish color. It really doesn't keep that bluish color, which I would say is sort of disappointing with this plant. When I first grew it, I was really excited when I got it and I saw that it had blue leaves, but at the time I wasn't as experienced with aquatic plants, and I didn't realize that it was going to change once I grew it submerged. And once I found that out, I was kind of disappointed, but at the same time, it's still a sort of attractive looking plant, a great background plant. You know, it gets bushy and it gets really big, but would I prefer that blue color? Absolutely. Now, as far as transitioning this plant from its immersed to its submerged grown state, in my opinion, it's actually very easy. I've had the easiest time transitioning this plant versus all my other plants in my pond and the plants that I sell on my website, and you know, things like that. Typically what happens though is it loses all of its leaves, and the only leaves that are left are these little tiny ones that are growing out of the top of the stem, or the stems. Because typically when you buy this plant from me, you don't just receive one stem, you receive multiple. So I'll say stems. And that's how it is pretty much everywhere else. But yeah, once it's transitioning to its submerged grown state, it'll lose all of its leaves. And this is part of the reason why a lot of people send me emails and they're like, oh my gosh, my Hygrophilia is dying, what do I do? And I have to remind them that no, you know, you bought it as an immersed grown plants in its immersed state, and this is just part of the transition process. So the plant isn't dying, so calm down, relax. That's just not the case. But this is just how this plant transitions to its submerged state. So if you notice this happening in your aquarium, just relax, don't worry. As long as the stems are intact, the plant is fine. Now if the whole plant is melting back or is turning a brown color, it's rotting, then yes, the plant is dying. But if it's losing its leaves and the stems are intact, then you're perfectly fine. Now, as far as substrate goes, it's actually, again, a really easy plant to grow. This plant does not really care if it's grown in nutrient-rich substrate, if it's grown in rocks or sand. It just prefers that it gets decent light and a little bit of nutrients, whether that's in the form of nutrients from your fish waste or your fish's waste, however you say that. Or if it's in the form of liquid nutrients that you dose on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, you know, whatever your dosing schedule is. I currently grow this plant in sand here at Jacob's Aquarium headquarters, and I have no nutrients in my sand, but I do rely on nutrients in the water in my pond, because I do dose nutrients in the water, just a little bit. It's probably not enough for all the plants in my pond, just because this is such a large system. It would be incredibly expensive to fertilize this whole pond to the right amount that it should actually be fertilized. So I'm really underdosing, but it still gets a little bit of nutrients from that. And I also inject CO2 as well. So I would say as long as you can provide either one of those and some decent light, you can definitely grow this plant in sand, gravel, anything besides nutrient-rich substrate. I will say though that it will grow a little bit slower. There's always trade-offs, guys. There's always sacrifices that you have to endure whenever you don't give a plant the pristine environment that it would pretty much grow in if it was in the wild. So a lot of plants typically grow slower in substrates that's not nutrient-rich. And this is one of those plants. Now, to propagate Hygrophilia blue, it's actually very simple, and I say this with a lot of plants, so I kind of feel like a broken record. But it's just a matter of clipping off a stem and pushing it down into your substrate, and it'll develop roots out of the bottom portion of the stem, and you can grow a whole nother portion of this plant. And a lot of people that are new to this hobby are kind of shocked when they hear that from me. They're like, you can just cut it off and just stick it in the they call it dirt. A lot of the new people. You can just stick it in the dirt and it'll grow a whole nother plant. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's pretty much that easy. You know, and it's that easy for this plant as well, Hygrophilia blue. So if you want to propagate it, definitely that's all you need to do. There's really nothing special that you have to do. I will say, however, that it is a plant that develops a really thick, dense root system once it really grows out. So if you're planning on growing this plant in a tank with other plants, just be aware of that fact, because whenever you have a lot of plants growing together and all the roots, or if you have a lot of dense root systems near each other, they're really going to be fighting each other for nutrients, and they're really going to kind of starve the substrated nutrients. Yes, you can rely on nutrients in the water of your aquarium, the liquid nutrients, but at the same time you want to give a plant some space to spread out its roots. You don't want it to be all entangled and squished around with other plants and things like that. Typically when you grow plants that way, you want to grow them in nutrient rich substrate. That way you can provide as much nutrients to those plants as possible, so that pretty much you're not just growing roots, you're growing plants. So that's really what you want to make sure of when you want to make sure of the placement with this plant. You want to grow it in the right part of your aquarium so that it's not overtaking other plants, because it definitely will do that. Its root system is very dense, it's very thick, and it spreads out a lot. So I would even say make this one of the 2 or 3 plants that you grow in your really big tank. Don't grow this along with like 25 other different plants unless you're growing it in nutrient rich substrate. In that case, you can pretty much grow as much as you want. And that's pretty much it. That's Hygro Blue. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I really also hope that you guys have been enjoying the recent upgrade in my video quality here on my channel. For those of you that don't know, I purchased the Panasonic S1H. It is a cinema camera, and it is a sizable investment. The body alone is $4,000. The lens was an additional $1,500 plus tax and all the other audio gear that I bought along with it. You can only imagine. It was a sizable investment for this channel, but I hope you guys have been enjoying the video quality, because I've been uploading lately in 5K. It's actually 5.9K, almost 6K, but my camera films at 5.9K in order to keep the aspect ratio, the 16:9 aspect ratio. For those of you that aren't familiar with camera gear and TV stuff, that was probably another language to you, but for those of you that are, you know what I'm talking about. So I've been uploading in 5K, which is pretty cool, because the level of detail that you guys have been able to experience while you watch my videos has been incredible. And also the colors as well, because this camera has a full frame sensor and it reproduces some amazing colors. So I've really enjoyed using it, and I can't wait to film future videos with this camera for you guys here on Jacob's Aquarium. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys are having a great day, night, weekend, wherever you are in the world. Hope you guys have a beautiful day. Please stay safe, happy, and healthy. I wish you guys nothing but the best, and I love you guys very much. And if you'd like to buy Hygro Blue, it's available right now on my website, jacobsaquarium.com. And also don't forget, you can check me out on social media. All my social media links will be in the description below. And if you have a question about this hobby, or a question about anything that I do, you can post that question as a comment on any of my social media pages, except for YouTube, because I don't allow comments on my YouTube videos. But I do allow comments on all my posts everywhere else on all the other social media platforms that I am currently on. Okay? I love you guys very much. Have a great day. Have fun with your tanks, and I'll see you next time.